So let's see if it's not working.
No. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the other way around. Okay. Okay. You're recording, or you're recording it, or you are recording? Okay, so I'll stay here. The camera. So first, thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. It's always nice to have a discussion in English. Our group does all the meetings in English, so it's kind of more natural to me to do the discussions in English. But this is a difficult subject. The first disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, so my approach to this topic is from the Spiritist view on addictions. So it's the spiritual consequences of addictions. When we talk about addictions, it's important to remember that the Spiritist center, it's not the only resource to treat those addicted. It's a complementary resource for medical treatment, psychological treatment, because we understand what goes beyond the physical body. But the physical body and an addiction is both physical and spiritual. The physical body has to be treated with a doctor or psychologist or the specialists. But we in the Spiritist Center can help and assist by providing an understanding of us as eternal spirits and how can it happen, what are the consequences, and that's very important, especially for those struggling and trying to fight addictions, and how can we help in a Spiritist Center? What resources do we have in a Spiritist Center? So again, raise your hands if you have questions, comments. Let's do an informal discussion here. So to start, we start with Paul of Tarsus. He said, I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. This is from the latest translation in English from the old Gospels. I like more the King James translation, which is I can do anything I want, but not everything is beneficial to me, is convenient to me. Meaning, we are free to act however we want, but there are consequences. So we have free will, and we are going to first understand what is free will. What's the difference between us having free will and the animals? Animals have instinct, right? So when a dog chooses to go this way or that way, it's not free will, it's instinct. We have been developed, we as eternal spirits from the spiritual principle, we have been developing this first, the reactions in the mineral phase, then on the plants, we develop the absorption of energies, the how we make some transformations. Then in the animal phase, we start learning to develop instinct, and then when we reach the spirit, the individual spirit phase, is when we start developing free will. And again, it's very important to understand the concept of free will. We develop free will. The free will of a caveman and the free will of us is completely different, because you only, as you experience more in life, as you evolve as an eternal spirit, you learn more how to use free will and how to benefit from this free will, from the choices you can make. When you are a caveman, to go all the way to the beginning, your free will is chase food, survive, protect yourself, eat the animals before the animals eat you, and that's basically it, right? So give a cell phone to a caveman and tell them, use your free will. There is no possibility. So just for us to understand how free will also, it's not something that is given to us by God. That's how many people think free will works. No, it's something that we develop as we evolve. With more free will that we develop, more responsibility comes to us. Our evolution comes from making mistakes and learning from our mistakes. We have many times we think that making mistakes create karmas. No. Making mistakes as a learning experience doesn't create anything. What creates karmas or consequences is repeating those mistakes that we already learned that we shouldn't make. And that's where free will comes. So again, going to our friends, the cavemen, when they killed the neighbor because the neighbor was trying to take away his cave, there was almost no consequence because they don't know what they're doing. When we kill our neighbor nowadays, there is a much more consequence because we know what we are doing. So free will is given to us, we develop, but God gives us the choice to make the decision and take the direction we choose. So in this process of evolution, we make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, we move on. No consequences. We make mistakes, we don't learn from our mistakes, we repeat our mistakes, so that's the bad decisions that we make. That creates consequences, that creates the karma. So the choices are always ours. When we come to Spiritism, we like to blame the spirits for everything, right? Every mistake we make, we say that's not us, it's the spirit made me do it, right? And it's our way to try to escape responsibility, right? We are all trying to escape from being responsible for our choices, and this is one of the things that makes Spiritism so great and so hard, because we learn a lot from Spiritism, where we are, what we are doing here, but it gives us responsibility for our actions, because it teaches us that it's our choices. We make our choices and we have to face the consequence of our choices. But as eternal spirits, we know that we are in constant evolution, and we are going to face these challenges, learn from them. Some of the mistakes we're going to repeat and create problems for ourselves, but as we continue evolving, we will overcome the challenges. For those that arrived after we started, if you have any questions, just raise your hand, because we are not many here, so we can stop and discuss. I think this is more of a study subject than really a lecture, because it's not an easy subject. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stop and ask. So free will in the end refers to the type of decision that's only human. It's a moral choice. When you are making choices, you are making choices knowing, through our evolution and through the natural laws that are imprinted in our conscience, what is good and what is bad, what is useful to us and what's harmful to us. So the choice is ours, and the free will that we all have makes us choose different paths. Also, Spiritism teaches us that there is no such thing as definite path for us. Nothing is, when we come to a new incarnation, we have guidance. We have things that we're supposed to achieve. We have trials that we have to face, and we have expiations or atonements that we have to go through. But everything goes according to our free will. Everything that happens in our lives, it's not destiny, it's our free will. Choices are going to be placed in front of us, and we have our free will, and we decide which way to take, and we are responsible for our own actions. So the consequences will be according to our choices. Now, the more you know, the more responsible you are. If you don't know what you are doing, there are not many consequences in that. So, in the Spirits book, Kardec asks the spirits if humans act with free will, and the spirit says, without free will, we'll be machines, right? So, if someone decides everything for me, I have no responsibility. Why should I have to face consequences of things that I haven't decided for myself, that others decided for me, or God decided for me? So that wouldn't make sense. Reason, our free will, it's what makes us not machines, but it brings the consequences, right? And then Kardec asks the spirits, why some spirits follow the good path and some spirits follow the evil path? God doesn't create spirits good or bad. We are all created the same, simple and ignorant. We make our own choices. So the wrong paths that we take on our journey are our own responsibility. So, why we talked so much about free will? Because in the end, addictions starts with our own free will. In the end, we cannot blame anyone for our addictions but ourselves. When we are going to talk about addictions, and let's first define what is good and what is bad, and understand, according to Spiritism, that these are not genetically determined. No one is born good or bad according to their genetic pool. It's we are all eternal spirits, so we bring with us what we accumulated from other incarnations. So, this popular saying, to err is human, we should actually use to be free is to be human, which makes more sense for us. So, vices, which generate addictions, are what keep us from the right way. So, according to ethics, it's an habitual disposition to conduct oneself in reproachable and immoral actions. It's the opposite of virtue. So, imperfection is a defect that makes a person or a thing unsuitable for the purpose it is destined. So, imperfection can be our own imperfections, or can be something that is not perfect. We are building something and it's not perfect. So it's unsuitable for the purpose that we are building this, right? So that's imperfection. The imperfections on us are our struggles to achieve what we all are going to achieve one day, which is to be a perfect spirit, right? In this process of being a perfect spirit, we have two wings of evolution, the moral and the intellectual. The intellectual is the easy one. Why? You keep adding. You don't subtract anything. So you are learning, you are adding. So if you want to really to learn math, right? What do you have to do? Study. Nobody's going to say it's impossible to learn math. If you sit and you really study hard, you're going to learn math. Now, on the moral side, that's much more difficult, because what we have to do there is subtract, eliminate our imperfections. So we are not patient. What we have to do? Learn to be patient. We have to eliminate the impatience in ourselves. And that's hard. Always to eliminate things that belong to us is much harder than adding on things that we already have, which is the intellectual evolution. So we live in society, and the vices that society brings to us are, all known by everyone. We are going to focus more on the social vices here because they are more tangible. They are more easy for us to talk about them because they have consequences that can be shown to us. So we have our moral vices, right? That and addictions that we have to get rid of it, but they are much more difficult to challenge and to give, examples of consequences. We're going to talk a little bit about obsessions and spiritual influences. But when you talk about alcoholism, smoking, drug abuse, it's something that we all know that it exists. It's all around us, right? And society allows a lot of these vices to be out there, free for everyone, free in the sense that they are not forbidden like some heavier drugs that are forbidden. But nowadays you are finding addictions to a lot of addictions to opioids, right? They are prescribed by doctors. Starts like that. Alcoholism, it's out there. You can buy alcohol if you are 21, right? The state, Connecticut's 21 now also, yeah, okay. And funny enough, amongst the social vices, the deadliest is smoking. You can think, really? Yes, because smoking, the drugs like heroin, like the other heavy drugs, they are deadly also, but they are not social vices, right? They are forbidden vices. Social, meaning those that are out there that people can have access without being forbidden. The deadliest one is smoking. Again, alcohol causes us to harm others with it many times, and smoking much less. But smoking causes much more damage to ourselves. So this is a lung of a smoker, and a healthy lung, and a lung of a smoker, heavy smoker. Look at that. The effects of smoking in the physical body. And then later we're going to talk about the effects of smoking in the perispirit, okay, the spiritual body. But in the physical body, it harms us from top to bottom. I'm not going to go there and read the description because we can all see what it causes. It hurts us everywhere. It's interesting that when we first prepared this presentation, I was looking at it. It was in 2012. We are 7 years later, and in 2012, more or less 18% of Americans smoked. 7 years later, it's 14%. So we are managing to eliminate, to reduce this habit of smoking in the general population. Unfortunately, it's being replaced by others, by alcohol, by other types of smoking, not cigarettes, but the electronic cigarettes and pot, all the other weed, all the other things that people sometimes replace one with another. And everything that causes addiction, it's not healthy, it's not helpful. So the problem with addiction is that it's very easy to start and very difficult to get rid of it. But if you talk to any doctor, and at SGNY we have one of the directors is a doctor, you know how many days it takes to get rid of heroin addiction from the physical body? If you put a person in the hospital and treat them, in 3 days you can, using the proper medicine, you can flush all the effects of heroin and free the person from the addiction. So why they don't free themselves? The mind, right? The addiction is a mental, psychological disease. It's not a physical disease. The physical, yes, of course, everything is physical and ends up manifesting the physical body. But you can treat addictions, the physical problem, and you can eliminate the dependency very quickly, depending on the drug. But to eliminate the desire to access whatever is the drug, it's much harder. We have a person that goes to our center. He's an alcoholic. He last had a drink 20 years ago. And when we were discussing this, I asked him, but do you still feel the desire to have a drink? And he told me, every day. Every day I wake up and I want to have a drink. So it's a battle that I have to fight every day. Does his physical body has any consequences or any physical necessity of the drinking? No, he stopped 20 years ago, so it's all gone. But every day he still feels the necessity of having a drink, and that's the mental aspect of it. And that's us as eternal spirits that have this tendency that we carry with us. Nowadays we have modern addictions, right? YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. These are more difficult to deal with it because how do we recognize these addictions, right? Well, throw your phone away for 1 week. See if you can live without your phone for 1 week. It's an addiction. But, we have to deal with so many things in our lives. We have to deal with so many problems that we have to make choices. We cannot fight all the battles because we are going to fail. So we have to choose the battles. And the addictions that harm us most are the ones that we have to focus first to overcome those addictions that are really causing us to struggle, to live. So, the phone addiction, we probably can survive with it unless, each one knows their own addiction to the phones or to the Facebook or to these other social media. But I don't know, maybe 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we will look back and we will analyze these problems with social media and things like that, and we'll have different solutions for this type of addictions. Nowadays, we're still not considering them as addictions, considering them more as vices in the sense of not being that heavy, but it's something that we have to keep an eye on, right? Especially those who have children, because we still do not have studies for the consequences of children being exposed to this since they are 2-3 years old. Our generations have not get old enough to be analyzed and to compare the consequence. So it's a study in progress. But I'm sure we are going to get more understanding and knowledge of this, what we can call social media addictions or vices. So when we talk about addiction in freedom, an addiction is always an action contrary to goodness. So every action has a consequence. If we are causing harm to ourselves through any addiction, we are preventing our progress, or we are making our progress more difficult. The time we spend repairing, because eventually we have to repair. Any person who is addicted is going to face the consequences of it, this life, spiritual life, next life, 3 lives ahead. But as eternal spirits, we have to overcome our imperfections. An addiction is an imperfection that we have to overcome. So the time we are going to spend trying to overcome an addiction is a time that we are not using for other opportunities of our moral and spiritual progress. Again, we are eternal spirits. We have all the time in the world to reach perfection. But the more we delay our progress, the more we make things difficult for ourselves. We're not really causing problems to anyone else, but to ourselves. So if we can deal with our imperfections, with our addictions in this life, if we can start dealing with them, if we can start first recognizing that they exist, because that's the first step. Many times we are addicted and we do not recognize that we are, and that makes it much more difficult to address it. So the first step is to recognize. It's already a huge step. And after recognizing, looking for help, looking for assistance. So let's go into Spiritism now in relation to addictions. According to the Spiritist vision, and this comes from the book After the Storm from Joanna de Angelis, if we have no moral values, or we lack moral values and moral understanding of us as eternal spirits, we will have less resistance to the fight. So the temptations are out there. If you have a moral values that we either bring with us, or we are taught from a young age, or we are brought, we are going to have more resistance, because we know what's good for us and what's not. So we will be less tempted to fall into these problems. And of course, this is a lack of a more spiritual vision of life, because if you think of us as eternal spirits, and you understand that every action has a reaction, every cause has a consequence, we are going to think twice before we make some decisions that are harmful to us. So if we don't have that spiritual vision, it's easier to fall on daily pressures, right? we lose our patience, we lose our balance, we struggle, we have problems, we try to escape from the problems in alcohol, in drugs. So we have the best tool that we have to help us is the gospel according to Spiritism. But the gospel, understanding the gospel not in the religious aspect, not like going to a church and being told what to do, is really using the gospel to help and assist us to educate ourselves and those around us on the moral aspect of our evolution. Now, the problem, according to Spiritism, the problem with addictions is that what happens? We attract obsessors. We attract spirits that want to share with us our vices. So, let's understand from us as eternal spirits. So, I'm a heavy smoker here. I die for any reason. It doesn't have to be from smoking. I just die for, let's say, an accident. I wake up on the other side. What do I miss? Cigarettes, smoking. So, how can I fill this hole in my spiritual necessity? Attaching myself with someone that smokes, right? So, anyone that is subject to these addictions are going to have companions around them. Now, there are two types of spirits around us, these companions. Those that are connected to us simply because they are sharing our addictions, and those that are personal. So, if I'm a smoker here, and I have spirits associated to me that are smoking with me, if I quit, they don't really need me. There are many others out there smoking, so they will insist because they're already used to me, so they'll try to make me think of smoking again. But if I insist and I really commit myself to not smoking, they move away because there are others there. When it's personal, it's more complicated, because then the spirit's not associated with me because of the smoking, he's associated with me for other reasons, and then it will be a different problem that it's not what we're going to discuss here. We're going to discuss here really the obsessions related to our addictions. So we create a psychosphere around us of the addictions we have. So if we drink, right? You probably seen people that say that they can drink, I can drink half a bottle of whiskey and I don't feel anything. Yeah, because you're giving everything to the obsessors. They are drinking for you. So you have to drink the whole bottle so you can feel something, right? And these spirits around us, of course, if they are addicted also in the spiritual world, they're not healthy companies that we want to have around us, right? Because their energies are low, are dense, are difficult, and we are going to carry this with us, making our life much more difficult. So the problem with the addictions is that we are carrying a whole bunch of obsessors around us, sharing with us our addiction. So we become like they say, a walking flag showing through the psychosphere, and the spirits can see. The spirits are looking for anyone that is addicted. They are going to see this energy around us showing that we are addicted, and we attract spirits with the same characteristics. And you see This is from the book In the Domain of Mediumship. They go to a bar. They enter into a bar, André Luiz and the mentor, and they see this guy drinking, and you see the obsessor connected to him, drinking with him. And when he sees the other spirits coming to help, he gets angry because he doesn't want to allow to lose his victim. In that book, they go and treat the spirit, the incarnated spirit, and they treat the obsessor also, try to help and assist the obsessor. But you see how hard it is. We really don't want to be this picture, right? Having those spirits around us. So that's what makes it withdraw difficult, because you will have spirits around you trying to tempt you to go back to your addiction, because they don't want to stop, because then they have to find someone else. Eventually they will, but their first try is always to stay around, because we get comfortable, right? It's like us here. We get comfortable in our lives. We get comfortable what happens around us. Spirits in the spiritual world, they get comfortable around people that share their desires. So they don't want to allow these people to move on. So every time that we are involved in an addiction, we attract these spiritual companies, and it makes much more difficult to withdraw. That's when we remember that we have guardian angels, we have protecting spirits that are available to us 24/7, all the time. It's just a matter of connecting to them, because normally we connect with the inferior ones that are much more easy. Our level is more or less the same, and we find it hard to connect with our spiritual benefactors, because then we need to elevate our thoughts. We need to vibrate at a more elevated level, and it's hard. How do we do that? Well, the easiest thing and the most important thing is pray. But prayer, really, in the true meaning of prayer, which is speaking from your heart to God or to the spiritual benefactors, to your guardian angel. And why prayer? Because in the moment that you are praying, if you are truly praying from your heart, you're automatically elevating your thoughts. You are elevating yourself and disconnecting from these inferior spirits that are around us. They cannot find us when we are vibrating at a more elevated level. So, for instance, when we come to a spiritist center and we bring our companions, and they either stay outside, or if they can be treated, they are brought inside. If we live here with our thoughts elevated, with the vibration elevated, they will try to find us. They won't be able to find us until we lower our vibration, and then if they are looking for us, the connection is done again. But it's important, so that's what we always say, it's important to leave the spiritist center with these thoughts elevated. Try to keep ourselves in the vibration that we achieved here in these meetings, so we can leave them behind, make it more difficult for them to connect with us, to reconnect with us. And some of them will be treated here, will be kept here, and will be able to disconnect from them. On the book Sex and Destiny, there is a very interesting description of Claudio when he's facing some problems, and immediately he goes for a bottle, and he attracts two entities that are connected with him, that were not really causing him any influences until he grabs the the bottle and starts drinking, and these two entities immediately connect with him and make everything heavy and make him take bad decisions for his life. And you can read in the book. So when he goes for the bottle is when the connection is made, and when the connection is made, these are two enemies from the past that want to harm him and influences him to make wrong choices. What happens, and this is a very interesting picture, right? Because we create a symbiosis with our discarnate friends, that we start living in this heavy ambient. You hear people, addicts, right? People that have addictions, describing the difficulties of their lives, right? The heavy energies that they feel when they feel bad, and they feel they struggle with everything. Normally, for addicted, you go to the places where they live, and it's always a mess, generally, right? They cannot take care of themselves. They cannot take care of the ambient they live. And this is because they feel so heavy, the energy around them, that they have no disposition to clean themselves and the ambient they live. A very important first step would be to live in a clean ambient, to try to maintain a clean environment around us, because that will help us elevate a little bit our vibrations and disconnect from some of these spirits that try to cause us harm. This is another picture from another book from André Luiz. You see the angry spirit trying to prevent the mentor to treat the patient who is very sick. So, going back to the effects of smoking, but now on our spiritual body. So, we affect it by numbing vibrations, by surrounding the organs with dark spots. This is our perispirit. We become insensitive to spiritual treatment, and it continues after our death. So you are a heavy smoker here, you damage your physical body, you damage your perispirit. The physical body and the perispirit are connected all the time. So what happens here goes there, what happens there goes here. The connection is always happening. So everything that we harm our physical body with those vices is going to transfer to our perispirit, or our spiritual body, and will continue with us after we go back to the spiritual world. So Chico was asked once, up to when this stays in the perispirit? And Chico answered, it lasts for the time the person smoked while on earth. So you smoked here for 40 years, it'll take you 40 years in the spiritual world to get rid of all the consequences. Yes. Disclaimer, I smoked for like good 15 years. So I was reading this, I said, I have something for me. I quit a good 25 years ago, but I smoked for like 15 years, and not very much. I was never a heavy smoker. But, the harm you do to your physical body, you carry with you. You never get rid of it. But I don't think I was addicted, because I quit, and I have no desire of getting a cigarette or anything. And actually, it bothers me a lot if someone is smoking close to me. So it was not an addiction in the sense that I have to fight every day not to go back to it. And I know people that smoke, quits, then 10 years later goes back to smoking again because it's in there, the addiction, right? But yeah, so you think of this answer for cigarettes and you can apply to all other addictions, right? Yeah.
We need to pay attention to our thoughts. I was a smoker too. I quit for a year and I came back. As I think it's like how we use alcohol. But sometimes we think we have the desire to use the cigarette or whatever, and it's not us, it's somebody else around us, So maybe that's why somebody when quit and they come back like over, is because doesn't have this knowledge about themselves. Because I am so thankful to spirituals because that's so I knew, in the end it was not me, it was somebody else. So the struggle was very big, but I quit. I didn't come back anymore.
Yeah,
So
knowledge is very important. Knowledge, because that's why we come here and we study and we try to learn, because knowledge is the first step. Knowledge without putting in practice, it's not really what we are supposed to do. But knowledge is the first step. We have to have the knowledge, because at least when after you leave here today, you have the knowledge of the consequences of addiction to our spiritual body, to our perispirit. Now, if this is going to change anything in the future, it may help. It help one day. It will help. In our eternal journey of evolution, everything that we learn, as I said, on the intellectual side, we keep with us, and we are going to be able to access it when we need. So that's a interesting picture, right?
Oh, yeah.
So again, we talking about obsessions. Those addicted to alcohol and other drugs become dangerous instruments of negative spirits. The person feeds oneself and feeds the obsessors. And what we can call indirect suicide, again, being very careful with this word, because spiritists have the tendency to think that everything is indirect suicide, and relates it to suicide, direct suicide, and these are completely different things. Okay, indirect suicide is really you causing harm to your physical body that will cause you to discarnate before you were supposed to discarnate. But you don't want to kill yourself in the sense of a suicide. You are indirectly killing yourself because you are harming your physical body. So when we talk about indirect suicide here, let's separate completely from suicide. That is an act that we commit against ourselves that have very serious consequences. Indirect suicide also has consequences, but they are much different from consequences from a direct suicide. But it is an indirect suicide. So let's say you come to this incarnation, you are supposed to live around 70 years, and through any addiction or any harm that you cause to your physical body, you live 50 years only and you go back to the spiritual world. It's an indirect suicide. You were supposed to stay here more. You lost an opportunity of another 20 years here in the physical world, and everything that you can benefit from another 20 years. So these addictions, they cause harm to us that they are serious and cause serious consequences. So this is a good question that it was asked on the Spirits book, question number, it's going to be here, I think 848. Does the distortion of intellectual faculties because of drunkenness excuse reprehensible acts? And the spirits answer, no, because drunkards voluntarily deprive themselves of their reason in order to satisfy their crude passions. Instead of one wrong, they commit two. So, if you cause harm because you are drunk, you cannot, according to Spiritism, according to our spiritual knowledge, you cannot claim you didn't know what you were doing. You knew what you were doing when you start drinking. So anything that happens after that is your own responsibility because you were drinking. It's not excusable because it was a consequence of you being inebriated. So what happens is that we go back to the spiritual realm and we still feel the need. That's the other problem with the addictions. We go back to the spiritual world, and instead of getting there and getting prepared for our new journey, learning in the spiritual world, using our time in the spiritual world in a productive way, we are dependent on associating ourselves to those that are addicted because we cannot get rid of it. And it becomes, in the spirit, everything is in the mind, right? Here, our physical body is a distraction. In the spiritual world, we don't have this distraction. We don't need to sleep, to eat, the needs of the physical body do not exist. So everything goes back to the mind. And you cannot think of anything else than your need for whatever dependence you had here in the physical world. So we attach ourselves to those addicted, and we end up causing harm to ourselves, to them, because everything that happens to, so let's say I become connected to someone that is addicted. Anything that happens to this person here, I'm also responsible because I was there connected to them as an obsessor. So the obsessor has responsibility also of the things that happen to the obsessed. The will is what we can use. On question 909, Kardec asks the spirits, could humans always overcome their evil tendencies through their own efforts? And the spirits answer, yes, and sometimes with very little effort. What they lack is willpower. How few of you make such an effort, however. That's unfortunately the reality. We don't want to change. We get used to our own ways, and we think that it's hard to change, because to change is to transform a bad habit in a good habit. It's habits. We have a bad habit, we have to get rid of it. How do we get rid of it? Transforming it into a good habit. Because that's the only way that we overcome whatever evil tendency we have. Is it hard? It's not that hard. We don't have the willpower to do it. We start and stop, right? Like many things we do in our lives, we start and then we give up very quickly. To fight our evil tendencies and to fight our addictions, we really do not make the effort we need in most cases. Talking a little bit about teens and vices, which is a very hard thing, right? How do they start on this? It's related to curiosity, excitement of doing something illegal, secret, peer pressure, group acceptance, independence, or to reduce unpleasant feelings, which happens a lot: stress, anxiety, loneliness, sadness, powerlessness. So that's why teens start experimenting with different types of vices. Let's call all everything vices, right? So the main reasons, it's to flee from problems, to search for pleasures, but a lot of times because of family breakdown, problems at home. How do we deal with that? How we can protect our children? Love and affection in all stages. Independently of what they are doing, we have to show love and affection, right? But with discipline. That's we sometimes we mix love with liberty, right? Give them freedom to do anything. It's not that. It's discipline, being fair, but providing discipline with love and affection. Again, very easy to say, very hard to put in practice. I have a 23-year-old son, and I know how hard it is to keep that. But we have to teach them to say no to drugs, dialogue. We need to talk to them. We need to learn to listen. We have to create a stable atmosphere at home. Because if they feel safe at home, it's less likely that they will look for these escapes outside. And we have to teach by example, right? Because how can we tell our kids not to drink if we are every night having our whiskey at home, right? It's hard. We have to guide by example. So if you don't want your kids to drink, don't have any alcohol at home. Easy, right?
Simple like that.
Simple like that, right? How many people do that? You don't want your kids to smoke, but you smoke. It's hard, right? It's to convince them to not do something that you are doing, right? They see you doing it. And that goes to everything else, the moral imperfections also, right? That we haven't spoken much here, but they follow much more our examples than our words. Look how cute this picture. If you teach them to pray, even the dog is praying. So, gospel at home, once a week. Make use of the gospel at home. As Emmanuel said here, the religious concepts with examples of the higher duties of life constitute the basis of education in the sacred institute of the family. Again, how to keep children away from drugs. André Luiz, in the domain of mediumship, tells us that family is a meeting of souls in the process of development and self-perfectionment. Nobody is there by chance. Our kids, ourselves, our brothers, sisters, parents, we are all there for a reason together because we need to learn together, we need to evolve together. And the best school in the preparation of reincarnate souls on earth is still the home. We shouldn't allow our kids to receive everything from the school. We have to teach them at home. That's the basic, the foundation of the education is at home. School is important for them to learn, but the education, the moral education, is done at home. So we should teach them spiritual knowledge. What we are, where did we come from, where we are here, why we are here, why do we suffer, what are the consequences of the use of drugs in this life, in the spiritual life, and in the future reincarnations. Spiritism gives us this wonderful tool of knowing the consequences of our actions in our future life. So if we can impart this to our children, even if they kind of don't pay attention to us, and I see with my son that he pretends not to pay attention. We keep talking about these things, but whenever he faces the challenges in his life outside us, he uses that. He lost a friend 1 month ago that had epileptic attack and died, and he was there consoling his friends with the spiritual knowledge that he has, and he claims that he doesn't care about it, but he was there using it, because you give them this knowledge, they will use it. Even if we don't see them using with us, they will use outside. Yeah. So the solution is always a comprehensive education of humankind on the basis of the gospel, which must start at home, continue in school, and in society. When we bring them to Spiritism, they can become more aware of the responsibilities addicts, and when they learn more about reincarnation and the law of cause and effect, we can find in spiritist literature the strength to fight our struggles. Some of them begin a new path, learn to forgive themselves and allow themselves to start a new journey. And finally, many return to life, like the prodigal son that in the parable told by Jesus, after learning the teachings of Spiritism. So it really, really helps, and we should always insist. And finally, what does the Spiritist Center can contribute to this? So through the passes, it helps regain health, to balance emotions, to detox, and to restore the perispirit. The passes will help harmonize our physical body and our spiritual body, clean ourselves from these inferior energies that we carry with us. The magnetized water contributes to the achievement of integral health, helps with what we need, the spirits gives to us. The process of disobsession breaks the mental tie that exists between obsessors and obsessed people, so we bring those companies to the Spiritist Center, and as I said before, many are kept here and treated here. Others are kept outside because they are not ready to be helped, but they are not allowed to come here. So people who come here with these heavy feelings and then come here and leave feeling lighter because they were able to disconnect from these companions that cause us harm on our daily lives. Of course, prayer to help us gather strength, inspiration, and confidence, the importance of prayer always. And we learn in the Spiritist Center our spiritual sense of life, and it stimulates our inner growth. If we're making the effort of coming here, as we always say in our center, nobody's forcing you to come here, except maybe the kid. We come here because we want. So if we take the opportunity of coming here, let's learn, let's use it. Let's use what we are learning here in our lives, because to learn is just the first step. To put in practice on our daily lives as much as we can. Again, we're not perfect, we have our struggles. Nobody's expected to live this life as a saint or a perfect spirit, but we are expected to live this life. We expect ourselves to live this life better than when we started. We don't compare ourselves to anyone. We compare ourselves to ourselves 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and see how much we are progressing. And that's what we should analyze and see if we are really growing morally and intellectually here. So that was basically the idea. I hope it wasn't too heavy. I hope you could learn and understand a little bit about how the spiritual process of addictions, that was the main objective here, how a Spiritist Center can help, and how all these addictions affect our spiritual body mainly. So thank you for coming on a Friday night. Beautiful weather out there. And I don't know if you want to, if you have any questions, or I don't know how you guys work here on Fridays. If you have any questions, I'm here. If not, thank you.